Brad and Nelson do battle here this morning with Esper Dragons. Round number one about to be underway here from Atlanta on the SCG Tour. Cedric Phillips, Patrick Sullivan, and as I mentioned, Nick Miller. He's in the sideboard doing your deck techs, picking your feature matches all weekend long as Gougelmann and Nelson are waiting for the green light. And we'll be underway here with round number one of Oath of the Gatewatch standard release weekends. Always some of my favorites.
Although, unfortunately for us, Brad Nelson, 75 cards, only 2 of them from the new set.
Boo!
But I'm sure that's going to be the exception rather than the rule for the weekend.
A Canopy Vista here for Gougelmann, along with a Shambling Vents and a Warden of the First Tree. For Nelson, he'll sacrifice that Flood Strand, fall down to 19. And there'll be a Sunken Hollow that he goes and grabs. Again, Nelson, he was the 2014 Players Champion. Made a top 4 run in the 2015 Players Championship, but Jim Davis able to get the job done there. So we'll see Jim at the Players Championship this year. Perhaps we'll see Brad there again. And with a new standard format, as he just playing Island, just passes the turn back. Brad, widely considered to be the best standard player in the world. You have to figure if he's choosing this deck, he feels it's pretty well positioned.
And like I said, it's not because of new cards, obviously. Brad's not playing very many new cards and no new cards in the main deck. I think this is just a function of expecting a lot of mid-range strategies and expecting a lot of Eldrazi strategies as well.
Warden of the First Tree becomes a 3/3. It'll come across for 3. Nelson will fall down to 16. But you saw that Gougelmann did miss his 3rd land drop. Abzan aggro deck that actually does play quite a few lands. Oftentimes you'll find 26 in the list.
And I got to sit next to Brad for one of our rounds during day 1 when he played against an Abzan aggro strategy, and he loves this matchup. Yes, he can definitely lose, and he can lose their best draws, but he feels like he can basically play on curve with them and has a much better late game.
Sunken Hollow was a land there for Nelson. The Warden will come across for 3 yet again. Looks like Nelson's going to fall down to 13. Windswept Heath the land for Gougelmann. He'll sacrifice that fetch land, fall down to 19. We'll see what land he wants to get. Likely to be a basic, as his lands right now are non-basic, so his battle lands aren't really cooperating with him.
The Warden is, in my opinion at least, one of the most powerful cards in this matchup. So important to get on the ground early and then force Brad to respawn his own turn, tapping out, allowing you to resolve other threats. Once Nelson gets into a spot where this board is stable and he has counterspell mana up, it's very hard for Abzan aggro to come back into the game.
Looks like Connor did drop a card there, shuffling, perhaps a little nervous in the feature match area this morning in Atlanta. So we'll make sure his deck is all situated here before he does present it back over to Nelson, and we'll see what the turn 4 play.
It's early for everyone, not necessarily nerves.
I'm wide awake, man.
I'm still warming up.
Well, you're new to this again.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, take a couple weeks off, forget how to do the whole thing. Now, here's Anna Fenz with the foremost. Gougelmann expecting this to be countered, and Slumgar Scorn will counter it. No reveal of a dragon necessary. Just going to go 4 spike mode as Nelson will draw an island for the turn. Brad with a Polluted Delta in hand. No white mana just yet. Though that Polluted Delta could find a Prairie Stream, enable white mana, though that Prairie Stream would enter the battlefield tapped.
Also can simply play the island in his hand and then use the Polluted Delta next turn, go get a Prairie Stream that comes into play untapped.
He'll go with the Delta this turn. You see another copy of Slumgar Scorn in hand. Also Dig Through Time, which is an interesting card to think about here as Gougelmann takes his turn. Dig Through Time, incredibly powerful, banned in multiple formats, yet doesn't see a lot of standard play.
Well, double blue is a little tough to cobble together, and blue might be the weakest color in standard right now, so that complicates things a little bit. And there's a lot of competition for the graveyard as well. There's cards like Murderous Cut and Treasure Cruise. So it's not the easiest card to slot in, but still extremely powerful.
Nelson will sacrifice that Delta, find himself a Prairie Stream, falls down to 9. That Warden is still out there. And a deck like Esper Dragons does a pretty nice job of taking care of early creatures with spot removal and Foul Tongue Invocation, but Nelson has not been able to do that just yet. However, the draw of a Dragonlord Ojutai might be his play this turn.
And Dragonlord Ojutai makes for a very good blocker on this board. So even if Nelson has no designs to go on offense, for the time being, it at least checks the Warden.
As far as new cards in Gougelmann's deck, because we're going to be on the hunt for new cards all weekend long, Sylvan Advocate is one, Nissa, Voice of Zendikar is another. As here's an Abzan Charm. That's an oldie but a goodie. Connor going to pay 2 light to draw 2 cards, fall down to 17. Silk Wrap among the cards that have been drawn. I think that's another card. We'll see how it plays in this particular format. Silk Wrap was, for a little while there, a top-tier removal spell because of Hangerback Walker and some of the lower curve decks. Now, who knows? These Eldrazi don't really care about it very much.
No, there's still a lot of things going on in Standards format that put a premium on exiling, including some of the new Eldrazi. So I think we're going to see maybe a little bit more of it week 1 than we saw in the previous standard format, but I expect it to be a fairly common removal spell.
Llanowar wastes the land. Here comes the Warden yet again. And Brad says, I am going to block. If you have a trick, you're going to have to play it. It'll be an Abzan Charm, but that's still going to be an exchange that's favorable for Brad. 5 power creature, 5 toughness creature.
And that Abzan Charm would have simply removed the Dragon Lord Ojutai had Brad attacked with it. So he's happy to make that trade. Almost certainly that attack is justified by Abzan Charm, and since that already answers Dragon Lord Ojutai, that's a very easy block for Brad.
Well, if one Dragon Lord Ojutai is good, a second is pretty good as well. He'll play another one, Will Nelson. A Polluted Delta, simply pass the turn back over to Gougelmann. Gougelmann's play thus far, just a Flooded Strand. You saw him play a Warden last turn. He'll sacrifice this Flooded Strand, fall down to 15. We'll see what he's got cooked up here as he does dig a land out of his deck.
And now Gougelmann is starting to enter the squeeze here, where if he leaves up mana for potential removal spell on Dragon Lord Ojutai, Nelson can simply do other things and not attack. If he taps out to get another threat on the table, he risks getting hit by Dragon Lord Ojutai. And once that starts to happen, removal spells and counter spells start getting chained together, and it's very hard to catch up.
It's the kind of game that Esper Dragons wants to play, and it's all built around Dragon Lord Ojutai. You know, with all the talk of the new cards from Oath of the Gatewatch, and how can you not? New sets are always exciting. Sometimes you forget about the old cards that are still quite powerful, and Dragon Lord Ojutai is certainly among them. One of the most powerful cards in this format. There is a Morph. Likely to be a Den Protector. Although it could be anything.
Could be anything. I'm going to scour the list real quick. It is Den Protector.
Yeah, we can confirm it's Den Protector. Nelson's going to sacrifice Polluted Delta on his upkeep. He'll get himself a Prairie Stream that'll enter the battlefield untapped thanks to those 2 basic lands. So battle lands will be entering untapped moving forward. Now do remember Nelson does have a copy of Dig Through Time in hand. He'll take a draw for the turn. Picked up another copy of Flooded Strand. And is it time for Dragon Lord Ojutai to head into the red zone? I suppose that's the question.
Well, Dragon Lord Ojutai is still a very effective blocker on this board. If you assume the morph there is Den Protector, that's also something that's not eligible to attack into the Dragon Lord Ojutai. So Brad has a pretty powerful incentive to hang back here on defense. If he feels his hand is very good and he can answer the board as it stands, then I think it's worth attacking. But if it's a borderline call, I think Brad is well served just hanging back on defense, especially with Dig Through Time in hand.
Well, he is going to hang back on defense for now. Den Protector is going to unmegamorph, so we get a +1/+1 counter, and we will see what it's going to return. It's going to go with Abzan Charm. That'll do a nice job of attempting to check the Dragon Lord Ojutai from ever attacking and potentially ever blocking well.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a play here where Connor just attacks and runs the same Abzan Charm play that we saw previously. The risk here is Brad's got a bunch of mana up, so any removal spell, any counter spell makes that sequence really bad.
Shambling Vent, the land for the turn, very powerful creature land. Some new creature lands, of course, from Oath of the Gatewatch as well, filling out that cycle. So perhaps we'll see some of those this weekend. Needle Spires among the bunch. Gougelmann, a lot to think about this turn. He's still got plenty of cards in hand. Of course, he did miss a couple of land drops to start the game. And he just returned an Abzan Charm, which could turn into even more cards. So we're shaping up for a little bit of a longer game here. The question, of course, is who does a longer game favor?
Oh, definitely Brad. I mean, Gougelmann doesn't necessarily beat if the game goes long. He has Abzan Charms and Den Protectors, but Brad plays this type of game a lot better.
Dragon Lord Ojutai is ready to jump in front of that Warden. And this kind of block here forces action from Connor.
Yes.
And I think that's exactly what Brad wants to have happen. He'll start Will Gougelmann by activating the Warden, and now here's an Abzan Charm. And a lot can go wrong here.
Even if this goes right for Gougelmann, it's not like he's that far ahead. This is his whole turn, and Brad has the opportunity to dig through time and so forth. And a lot can go wrong here.
Now for Gougelmann, he made the Warden into a 3/3, so it's level 1 right now, and then Abzan Charm is going to split the +1/+1 counters. One will go on the Warden, one will go on the Den Protector. The Warden will turn into a 4/4, assuming this Abzan Charm resolves, and then it can trade with the Dragon Lord Ojutai. The Den Protector would get another counter as well, then make it into a 4-power creature. So I like the splitting, because, you know, putting 2 counters on the Warden's not going to do very much here. But again, this has to resolve to be effective.
Yes, might as well split, but again, a lot can go wrong here. And something just went wrong.
Slumgar Scoring will take care of that Abzan Charm. Den Protector looks like it's going to get through some damage here. Warden will fall down. And now Nelson's going to sacrifice that fetch land. This is going to bring him down to 4. Now 4 is pretty low against a deck that does have access to Siege Rhino.
But the difference between 4 and 3 is significant. So Brad here does not necessarily have to counter every Siege Rhino for the remainder of the game.
Now it looks like it's going to be the first dig through time. So 5 mana, delve 3.
I think what Brad is really on the hunt for right now is foul tongueification. That would keep the board clear so he could rationalize his hack with Dragonlord Ojutai, which is where he wants the game to get to. On top of that, 4 life right now, very valuable, facing down Shambling Vents and worried about potential Siege Rhino triggers.
Well, Brad will take a look at the top 7. He'll be taking 2 cards with him. There is another dig through time in that bunch. But he's found 2 cards that he is happy with. The rest will go to the bottom. And we'll be heading back Nelson's way here in just a moment.
Almost any removal spell or counter spell will be good here for Brad. But like I said, I think the real prize is foul tongue invocation.
Draw a card for the turn. It's an island. Going to separate all those lands. I don't think he's conceding this game. That was one of those concession scoop of the lands there.
I'm not even going to bother attack with Dragonlord Ojutai. I'm just done. I'm done here.
There's nothing to find. Here comes the 5/4 flyer. That'll connect. Gougelmann will fall down to 10. Take a look at the top 3 cards. Going to get to take 1 with him. You see a duress in there. That's going to go to the bottom. That's a main deck card here for Esper Dragons, and I think a lot of other people this weekend.
I mean, duress is even good against the beatdown decks of the format because there's so much token generation and pump spells, and duress pulls a lot of weight in the control matchups for obvious reasons. Negate and dispel all over the place for similar reasons.
Yeah. It's not Thoughtseize, but nothing is.
No. Inquisition's pretty close.
That's true. Nelson's going to pass with this huge swath of land yet again.
The formerly budget option Inquisition, Kozilek, no longer the case.
It's gotten a touch expensive.
Yeah.
Here comes the Den Protector. Nelson will play an ultimate price to take care of that. The tough thing there for Gougelmann is when you are staring at 2 Shambling Vents and along with the cards in your hand, are you supposed to just fire those vents and hope he has nothing? Are you supposed to try to cast spells and hope they resolve? You're in a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, he can try to split it here a little bit by casting some spells and trying to set up an attack with both Shambling Vents some turns down the line. The problem here is he does not have a whole lot of time. He's at 10 and getting hit in increments of 5.
And I think that's some of the appeal of this deck, as it looks like it's going to be Scatter to the Winds with Awaken. That'll take care of the Gideon. The islands are 3/3. But one of the nice things about Esper Dragons, typically you see control decks, they take a little while to close. When you hear Dragonlord Ojutai hitting for 5, it doesn't take long to close at all.
Yeah, I lost to this deck at the Grand Prix, and I went from I'm attacking and my opponent's stabilizing the board and playing removals to sweepers to I'm dead from damage in a very short period of time relative to most blue control decks. You don't have to hold on forever. And you can't really. The counter spells and standard are not good enough to allow you to play that sort of game. So you need to be a little bit more aggressive. Use the counter spells to buy you enough time and get you a little bit of tempo. But it's not just a draw-go deck. It's trying to put something into play and apply pressure and end the game kind of quickly.
Here comes another dig through time from Nelson. So he'll delve away a bunch of cards, take a look at the top 7, take 2 with him. So, you know, a lot of people classify Esper Dragons as a control deck. It doesn't feel quite like that. You know, it's not a control deck in Magic's purest form. So how would you classify a deck like this?
Oh, it's definitely a control deck. It's just a control deck by the standards of Standard.
Okay.
We don't have the same density of awesome counter spells that we had 10 or 15 years ago in Standard, and I think that's for the best. This is what a control deck looks like now.
Sure. But, you know, these Mardu green decks that we've seen, some of these Abzan decks, these decks built around Jace like Jeskai Black, they can go along with a deck like this.
And there are other builds of this deck that can play an even much longer game. You know, Reed Duke's been an advocate of builds of Esper with no dragons and only Ugin as a top end. I think the problem with that deck is it's very hard to finish matches in time. And you see Brad here, 36 minutes left on the clock, having won game 1. You can see some of the merits of having Dragonlord Ojutai just as a concession to the clock.
Brad Nelson does win game number 1 here over Connor Gougelmann. Esper Dragons up a game over Abzan aggro as these players get ready to sideboard. Plenty of time left in the match for each of them. So we do take a look at the sideboards here for both players. And we will start with Connor Gougelmann with his 2 Pitiless Hordes, 2 Transgress the Mind, 3 Duress, 2 Self-Inflicted Wound, 3 Hollowed Moonlights for the very popular 4-color rally deck, 2 Eliminating Glare, and an Ultimate Price.
I think the discard spells and the Pitiless Hordes here are very good. Self-Inflicted Wound can come in this kind of matchup as just an answer to Dragonlord Ojutai. But I think the best cards here are his discard spells and his couple copies of Pitiless Horde.
For Brad Nelson, you want to talk about new cards, 2 Flaying Tendrils. That's the brand new Infest. You've got a Russian Cleric, a Tasker the Golden Fang, an Obnixilis Reignited, 3 Monastery Mentors, 2 Gideon Ally of Zendikar, an Infinite Obliteration, a Disdainful Stroke, a Painful Truth, and 2 copies of Duress.
And I know Brad and I talked about his sideboarding at the Grand Prix. He loves just bringing a bunch of threat cards against decks like Abzan, assuming that they've cut all the creature removal. So the Gideons, the Monastery Mentors, the Obnixilis, the Tasker, those are all coming in here. I wouldn't be surprised if the one Disdainful Stroke came in as well, as Abzan Aggro is known to have a lot of premium 4s like Siege Rhino and Gideon.
Well, those are the options there for both players. They'll shuffle up. Connor Gougelmann will be on the play. But in the meantime, we will talk about Game Night, the very popular promotion by StarCityGames.com. Every week in January, you can get old Grizzly Brand. Not a lot of time left this month of January, but we've got some new stuff here for you. Now, I know you know February, but do you know March?
I do not know March.
Perfect. So for February,
Magus of the Moo.
you know this one.
Seen this before. It's been around for a couple of months now. Got a couple chuckles out of it. That's going to be coming down the pipeline next month. And March, Grim. Come on.
That might be for you.
Llamamancer. Awesome. So anyhow, you head over to StarCityGames.com/game night. Get signed up. Have game night at your store on a regular basis. Every month we send out these pins and foils that players can play for. We give stores a lot of flexibility with game night to set it up however they want to. Any day of the week, any format. Just get players in the store for some fun and friendly magic. And now you see the next couple kits coming down the pipeline.
Grim Llamamancer. We're deeming the Llamamancer Tina.
Okay.
For Napoleon Dynamite, if you're familiar with the movie.
I am. That's a. I mean, that's the most obvious.
Well, look, you've been gone.
I know.
If you have better ideas, I'm all ears.
Yeah, it's no Otto von Bismarck, but
very true.
I guess it'll play.
For Brad Nelson, of course, he was our 2014 Players Championship winner. The resume is vast for Brad. You know, he did play golf throughout his high school. Was once a scratch golfer, which is a very impressive accomplishment if you know anything about golf. And he's an avid StarCraft 2 fan. But you see 2 invitational top 8s with a win in 2013, 8 Open top 8s with a W, 2 Pro Tour top 8s, 12 Grand Prix top 8s as well. 9th place at Grand Prix Oakland with an iteration of Esper Dragon just a couple weeks ago. One of Magic's very best.
Yes, particularly in Standard. A master of constructed formats, but especially Standard. His resume there, without parallel, without peer.
Now, one thing you think about with a deck like Esper Dragons, again, and then this always happens with a new set, right? You look at a new set and you say, okay, how can the cards from Oath of the Gatewatch go into an existing deck? What kind of new decks do they bring to the table? So a card like Nissa, Voice of Zendikar, people are trying to slot that into various decks. You take a look at Oath of Nissa or Oath of Gideon, what can those cards do? But, you know, one of the things that wasn't really talked about is what kind of cards go into Esper Dragons? Does this deck even really get any help? And outside of the Flaying Tendrils, you don't see any new cards.
But Flaying Tendrils is a big one. Because the worst matchup for this deck is Atarka Red and similar decks. And Languish is good in those matchups, but the difference between turn 4 and turn 3, especially when you're on the draw, is huge. On top of that, Exiling is at a premium in some matchups as well. So even though this deck doesn't get a lot of new additions, new cards it would want to add, I think Flaying Tendrils is a huge boost for some of its worst matchups.
You know, that one, when it was kind of spoiled and released, it's like, oh, okay, this card's going to play a big role in things. This is something that was really needed against Atarka Red from various decks, so that's going to be a huge thing. But then, you know, we see some new cards, some new Eldrazi, stuff like that, and those were the center of attention. But you can't forget that there is that infest effect in the format now.
Well, the concern that I have with Flaying Tendrils and why I think it's going to be a hard card to put in all over the place is double black on turn 3 is not something that a lot of these 4-color mana bases facilitate very easily. The battle lands and fetch lands are very good at allowing you to assemble 3 or 4 colors of different mana early on in the game. They are not that helpful at producing double colored mana. And a deck like Abzan Aggro, even in my opinion, is kind of a 2.5 color deck. Black has really been pulled back from it to focus on being able to get green and white mana early on in the game. So how many decks can realistically play a double black spell you're trying to cast on the 3rd turn? Esper Dragons is one of them. I think there are builds of Mardu you could produce that could also cast this card either out of the main deck or out of the sideboard. But the current mana bases are not that easy on this kind of card.
Now, you mentioned Abzan Aggro, a deck that doesn't have access to a ton of black mana. You see it's basically capital G, capital W, lowercase b for black. You look at the black cards of the deck, Siege Rhino. You've got Murderous Cut. You've got Abzan Charm. You're not really going to find double black cards. And the new addition here that Connor's playing, Nissa, that's a double green card.
Yes.
So you're not going to find a ton of black mana in a deck like this. Some sideboarded discard like Duresses, Pitiless Horde has a single black in there, Transgress the Mind as well. But it is definitely green-white centric.
The Battlelands and Fetchlands together are much better at casting Crackling Doom on the 3rd turn than they are at casting Flaying Tendrils, even though Flaying Tendrils is obviously ostensibly a much easier card to cast for the average deck.
That's what makes Standard such a weird format. You really have to put some time in on building those mana bases to make sure that you can play your spells. And then you'll find, you know, a deck like Abzan, where we saw a card, the Tri-Land, Sandsep Citadel, just doesn't even see play in the deck anymore, which is just crazy to think about. But for what you're trying to do with fetch lands and battle lands, it just makes sense not to play it.
The non-basic lands here, I think Nelson going down to 4 cards now. The non-basic lands that aren't fetch lands are just an enormous cost alongside battle lands. In fact, it surprises me how many copies of Shambling Vent, and Shambling Vent's an extremely powerful Magic card. Even that card, I question, are you really supposed to have 4 copies in your list because of the awkwardness it can brew sometimes with your Canopy Vistas and Smoldering Marshes?
Well, taking a look at Connor's deck, listen, unfortunately for you at home, you can't see this, but it was a 4 to start. He scratched out that 4, brought it down to 3, and he's made room for a Hissing Quagmire this weekend.
Okay.
That's the black-green creature land. Nelson on a mulligan to 4 right now. Looks like he's going to keep with the Scry. For Gougelmann, he's going to sacrifice a Wooded Foothills. There you do see Hissing Quagmire. I'm a fan of this one.
Yeah, I think the lands that got produced in Oath of the Gatewatch, I think the black-green one and the red-blue one are more powerful than the ones that got printed in Battle for Zendikar. And it's not like those cards didn't show up.
No.
Plenty of decks play with Shambling Vent. And Lumbering Falls, I think if blue-green was a more popular color combination, you would see a lot more copies of that card as well.
Nelson started things off with a Sunken Hollow. For Gougelmann, a basic forest and a Warden of the First Tree. Sacrifice the Flooded Strand now. Fall down to 18. We'll see what land he wants to go grab. I'm predicting a Plains, and it will be a Plains, which means that the Warden could be turning into a 3/3 right now.
And in my opinion, the blue-red creature land is about as good as the World Wake lands. It's the one of the new cycle, I think, that is by far the highest in power level.
Yeah, Wandering Fumarole is no joke, that's for sure. Now, we do see a new card here from Gougelmann. Again, he has some new additions here. Sylvan Advocate was the play. Not a lot of conversation about this card as Nelson with the Plains look like it's going to be a Silk Wrap. But for the Advocate, you see a 2-mana 2/3 Vigilance, and as long as you control 6 or more lands, Sylvan Advocate and land creatures you control get +2/+2.
I think this card, we're going to see some amount in various Eldrazi ramp strategies.
Okay.
And this is another card. A lot gets made of the sweepers being problems for a target red. Creatures with these kind of numbers, 2/3 Vigilance, 2/3 Death Touch, that people can play in the main deck, also really problematic for a bunch of 1/1s and pump spells.
For a deck like Outside Aggro, we have seen different 2-drops. I think Air of the Wilds, that has made it in the deck sometimes. The Advocate is in the deck now. Looks like Gougelmann giving that a try. He does have another one along with the Shambling Vents, and there's an attack from the Warden. Nelson with a 3rd land, so he's still able to operate okay. Again, remember, he's on a mulligan to 4. And Gougelmann thinking about playing a Smoldering Marsh, going to go with the Windswept Heath instead. He'll come across here. It is worth noting that Sylvan Advocate does have Vigilance. It was kind of just tacked on there.
Bit of a Namba with Anafenza, though, right?
I think so.
I think Anafenza, the creature has to be tapped for you to pump it.
Yeah, we'll actually take a look. I think you might be right. It might just be attacking creature, but it might have to be tapped. We can bring Anafenza up.
I would like a double check on this one.
Another target tapped creature. Yeah, you're right. That is a bit of a non-bow. Huh.
Whatever. It's week 1.
Yeah. Here's a Foul Song Invocation. We're all learning together, aren't we? There goes the Advocate. Nelson will draw a card now.
I saw people Bloodbraid Elf into X spells early on in that standard format. You just learn over time.
Guilty. Guilty. At that Block Pro Tour, I Cascading Lighted into a Counter Squall.
Nice.
That's when I was 0-3. Worked my way down to 0-4 there. So, just kind of learning as we go.
I think the Advocate is a huge deal for Eldrazi strategies, though.
Same. I think it'll have a nice fit there. Yeah, it might make it so that you don't have to play a card like Jati Offshoot anymore. And not that I think the Offshoot is bad, but I think there have to be better options.
I'm not a fan of the Offshoot. Advocate's like a functional card in non-Atarka red matchups.
Yeah.
Right.
The Offshoot is not.
And also with Explosive Vegetations, you're just there.
That's also true, yeah.
You're just up to 6 lands.
Nelson did miss his land drop. You see the Gougelmann does have 5 lands on the battlefield. Shambling Vent among them.
Also needs an early creature to bolster onto.
Oh, hello, Map the Waste. Don't mind if a Dusky. Looks like Shambling Vent's going to be animated. And now here come the creatures. Does not appear Nelson has any sort of response. And now there's a Warden and pass the turn back. Now, worth noting right now in Connor's hand, does have 2 copies of Self-Inflicted Wound. They're kind of just sitting in his hand, hanging out, waiting for Dragonlord Oja to show up.
Yep. Or potential other sideboarded creatures as well. And I think Brad has brought in cards like Monastery Mentor, so Self-Inflicted Wound could be very good here.
Gougelmann will sacrifice a fetch land, fall down to 16. 2 Wardens out there on the battlefield. Gonna go with the basic Plains, it appears. And one of the things about the Sylvan Advocate right now, you see 6 lands on the battlefield. Abzan Aggro, it is deemed an aggressive deck, but it does play longer games where it does get to 6 and 7 mana.
Sure, you got Shambling Man, you got Den Protector. You can hang around for a long time. You have Wingmate Rock, so you're already planning to at least get to 5 mana.
Yeah.
And 6 is only one more than 5.
That's
math.
And you said you were slow out of the gate this morning. You kidding me? Got to pump up the Warden here, real Gougelmann.
Got the engine rev just thinking about Sylvan Advocate and Anafenza together.
Can't get anything by him. Nelson will draw a card.
Turn 2 Advocate, turn 3 Anafenza, turn 4 nuts. All right, well, whatever. It's
Take
6.
6, yeah.
6 is still okay.
Take 6, not 7, just 6. Here's Jace, its first appearance this weekend. Gougelmann will draw 18 and 9 the life totals here in favor of Connor. There's a Canopy Vista. Here comes something. Looks like Transgress the Mind.
You might see a concession here from Brad to conceal information if he thinks he can no longer win.
He'll show the grip. Dragonlord Ojutai down. Another Dragonlord Ojutai and a Disdainful Stroke in hand for Nelson. Wardens are coming. Threatening to pump. Clear for takeoff. Gougelmann knows that. So the other one will be level 1 now as well. This will be an attack for 6. Connor will just pass the turn back. Nelson will draw. Looks like he may have picked up a copy of Bloodstained Mire for the turn.
And Bloodstained Mire is not with the Doctor Order here because if Brad falls to 2, then the 2 Wardens plus the Shambling Vent powers past the 2 blockers Nelson has available.
A nice thing there for Connor, as he also doesn't have to show Self-Inflicted Wound that game. So, Connor Gougelmann's going to win game number 2 here over Brad Nelson. Abzan Aggro Esper Dragons getting ready for game number 3.
4 cards is hard to overcome. Top mulligan to overcome.
You are not wrong about that. So these players will shuffle up, get ready here for game number 3. Interesting matchup so far, however. I do think that things do favor Brad. As you mentioned, mulligans are difficult to overcome. I'm curious to see how the setup will go after sideboard. You mentioned all the creatures that he could bring in, and I'm curious if he will actually do that or not.
Yeah, I'm curious too. From the conversation that I had with him in Oakland, it sounded like he'd like bring in all the threat cards, assuming that there's no way that Abzan Aggro either leads into removal, or if they have enough removal, they don't have enough pressure to beat you before your card advantage comes online. I don't know if that's biased anymore by play or draw, but I would imagine with Nelson on the play, he'd be more inclined to bring in cards like Gideon if he didn't have them before.
When you see the options available for both players yet again. Again, they will shuffle on sideboard. Plenty of time to finish game 3, it appears. So game 3 will be underway. Brad Nelson will be on the play here in just a moment. Let's talk about what these players are playing for this weekend, because it is quite a bit in Atlanta. First place, $5,000, 30 SCG points, an invite to our first invitational of the year in Columbus. That'll be taking place in April. Second place, $2,000, 25 SCG points, an invite as well. Top 4, top 8, all the way down to top 64. That's where the money will be for our 567 players in Atlanta. A lot on the line, as we have seen over the past couple of weekends when we were both in Cincinnati and Charlotte. These SCG points, they do matter to quite a few people, and we've also seen some teams forming here on the SCG Tour.
Yeah, and with the new structure on the SCG Tour, you know, we've really turned off the faucet on the Open Series points. No longer can grinding at your local store get you to the Players' Championship. So those 30 points, they're a lot of points in an absolute sense, and especially now in a relative sense, because you can't really pick it up on the local level. You've got to be grinding these Open Series events, these classics, and the regional championships.
Yeah, you will find regionals in just a couple weeks from now. That's going to be a very important event for many that are looking to qualify for the Players' Championship, that's for sure. And then, of course, you'll find that you can also get SCG points here at Opens for our main events, and then Classics on Sunday. That's it. So if you're looking to qualify for that Players' Championship, you know the path to do so. Very straightforward.
And similar to last year, the classics that are available on Sunday, they are whatever the format. The formats were not for the main event.
Correct.
So we have standard here. Tomorrow will be modern and legacy for the classics.
I'm going to keep my eye on that modern one. I want to see what the Eldrazi are going to do, because everyone's trying to figure out the best way to build a deck. Are you black-blue? Are you black-white? Are you mono-black? You know, or maybe are you black-green and people haven't thought about that combination yet? Heartless Summoning, maybe yes, maybe no. Delay, maybe yes, maybe no.
And if you're in the market to just dump a bunch of really good mid-range creatures onto the table, you got to really like the bans to Splinter Twin and Amulet, the Summer Bloom and Splinter Twin, because those were 2 of the most prohibitive decks to playing with just good 4 and 5 mana creatures.
Yeah. I'm going to be very curious. Again, you know, we'll see if, you know, someone like Jeff Hoagland, if he doesn't make day 2 this weekend, though he is coming in with 2 buys in a 9-round tournament, and he's been known to brew, and that black-white control deck that he had at the Season 4 Invitational, very good. Perhaps that got some updates. But if he doesn't make day 2, what's he bringing to the modern table? Is it still Kiki Court time?
We'll see. You know what card I'd be playing tomorrow? I'd be playing with Lingering Souls.
Yeah?
If the format's fast, Lingering Souls is powerful. If the format's slow, Lingering Souls is powerful. The card's not very good against decks like Twin and Summer Bloom for obvious reasons, but those decks are no longer illegal. I don't know what I would want to surround it with. Could be an aggressive shell, could be a controlling shell, could be, a deck like Gougelmann, whatever. But I would want to be playing with 4 copies of Lingering Souls tomorrow.
Sounds reasonable to me. It is, when it's good in a matchup, it's very good.
And we talked about this a little bit on the podcast last week. I think the format slows down a lot. You think the format speeds up. It could play out in a number of different ways. But whether or not it's slow or fast, if you're trying to beat Affinity and Infect, Lingering Souls is very good. And if you're trying to beat people with cryptic commands, Lingering Souls is also very powerful. So I think that's a very good way to hedge.
It's that place where people are trying to ignore you with combos where it's very bad.
Yeah, you can't tap out for that card against Twin. You just get killed. And if you don't get killed, it doesn't matter very much in the long term.
They can beat 2 1/1 flyers, trust me.
And, Primeval Titan can trample and double strike over the 2 tokens you got to make on your 3rd turn.
Yeah, maybe your 2nd turn.
Yeah, your 2nd turn or whatever.
Depends how you're running.
Right.
That's for sure. These players are going to take a look at their opening hands here. We'll see if Nelson can keep more than 4 cards for game number 3. Keep in mind, we'll be talking about Oath of the Gatewatch all weekend long across all the formats. So if you have any questions, at SCG Live, hashtag SCGATL all weekend long. Round number 5 at the beginning is when we'll take as many questions as we can, but we've got access to our Twitters here, so feel free to use that hashtag and get in touch with us here in the booth, as there are a lot of cards to discuss from this set. Both players starting off with a Flooded Strand here. Nelson going to sacrifice his. He'll fall down to 19. We'll see what land Brad wants to get. Looks like he's thinking Basic Plains as he has gone by. Excuse me, he went by quite a few islands, but he's actually going to go with a Battle Land here in Sunken Hollow.
And both these decks are interesting to me on a mana level because they are both kind of 2.5 color decks. Abzan Aggro just touching a little bit of black. I mean, there's a lot of black cards, but it's trying to play green and white early on and then eventually hit black for some black spells. As for Dragons, a blue-black deck with just a little bit of white in it.
Nelson looks like he's thinking Duress with how he's tapped his mana. So Duress it will be. A Silk Wrap, a Flooded Strand, a Smoldering Marsh, a Pitiless Horde, a Windswept Heath, a Forest, and an Anafenza the Foremost. Silk Wrap the only choice, so that'll bite the dust. Nelson will record the rest of the information. And it is good to know about Pitiless Horde.
Yes, that's a good one to know about. And Duress might look a little odd in this matchup because Gougelmann does not have a whole lot of spells. I think this is basically a concession to Gideon. Gideon's very good against Esper Dragons if it's able to sneak into play. Brad doesn't have a whole lot of ways to get it off the table easily. And there are enough spells that even if Gideon doesn't happen to be in Gougelmann's hand, you're probably going to hit something.
An island for Nelson and a passing of the turn. Connor will sacrifice that fetch line, get a Basic Plains. He'll fall down to 19. We're even up here as Gougelmann will head to his 2nd turn.
Gougelmann showing a lot of respect for the possibility of creatures if Silk Wrap is still in his deck. I don't think he would leave that card in if it was only Jace he was concerned about. He must assume that Nelson has Monastery Mentors or other creatures that he can tag with Silk Wrap.
Connor will draw a card. See where he wants to go in his 2nd turn. He has plenty of lands in hand. I think he might just be trying to figure out which one he wants to play here. And he's thinking Forest and just pass the turn back over to Nelson. Battlelands will be online for Gougelmann moving forward. Back over to Nelson we go. He'll draw a card. It's his 3rd turn of the game. It's a Basic Plains. And now it's a Monastery Mentor. Self-inflicted wound, a timely draw here for Connor.
Monastery Mentor can run away with the game very easily if Nelson gets untapped, so very important for Gougelmann to get this off the table.
I'm sure he'd love to do something like play Anafenza this turn, but I'm with you. If I'm in Connor's spot, I'm casting Self-Inflicted Wound. I want that Monastery Mentor off the battlefield because I might not ever get a chance at it again.
Yeah, you play Anafenza, Nelson untaps and plays a removal spell on your Anafenza, and that's the end of the game. So I know playing this off curve is not that good for Gougelmann, but he has to do it.
Self-Inflicted Wound does take care of that Monastery Mentor. Nelson with just the Polluted Delta passing the turn back. Fell down to 17 from the Self-Inflicted Wound. As now Gougelmann will draw. Looks like he picked up a copy of Sylvan Advocate for the turn. There is a Windswept Heath. Down to 18 he goes. Again, Battlelands are online here, so we could see something like a Canopy Vista. Also a Prairie Stream could be an option. Gougelmann very quickly searching through his deck. He knows exactly what he wants. He's going to go with that Canopy Vista. And we'll see what the spell will be. Again, remember, we know he has Pitiless Horde and Offensa in hand, also Sylvan Advocate. Now here's a Transgress the Mind, looking to clear the path here. You can see Dragonlord Salumgar, Dragonlord Ojutai, Ultimate Price, and Ruinous Path.
Yep, you can see Nelson post-board, a lot of creatures, a lot of threats, really daring Gougelmann to leave in a lot of removal spells of his own, and leaving in a ton of removal spells plus siding and discard spells. How do you have enough threats left in your deck? So you can see why Nelson likes taking this approach to the matchup.
Looks like Dragonlord Ojutai is going to bite the dust. Keep in mind, Nelson with 4 lands on the battlefield, he's going to have to draw some to be able to cast these spells. There's Sylvan Advocate, pretty juicy target for an Ultimate Price if Brad wants to fire off here. But you have to remember, Brad knows about the Pitiless Horde in hand.
Yep.
So perhaps he wants to hang tight with the Ultimate Price. And it looks like he will. Time to draw a card.
He's also got a Dragonlord Salumgar in hand, so there is some incentive to just leaving a threat on the table if it's not that taxing to you, so you have something to steal if you want to play it on curve.
He's got some life to work with.
Yeah, he can take some shots here. If Gougelmann doesn't add anything else, and Brad just wants to get a threat on the table, at least there's something to take.
Polluted Delta will be sacrificed. And perhaps now, as he does search up a Sunken Hollow, we'll see the Ruinous Path.
Yep.
With the ability to leave up Ultimate Price. Because the one thing about Dragonlord Salumgar in this matchup, it's always going to be good. It's just a very powerful card. Now, how do you feel about Ruinous Path taking care of this?
I would err on the side. I would probably have left it in play and started taking some shots here. Maybe that equation changes when Gougelmann gets to a 5th land and then is threatening to go to a 4/5. But I also respect that Nelson's played this matchup a million more times than I do. So,
well, here is Anafenza. 5th land for Gougelmann was a Flooded Strand. Now we head back Nelson's way. Was he able to draw land number 6? The answer appears to be no. So we'll just pass the turn back. Connor will sacrifice that fetch land, fall down to 17. We'll find out what land he wants to get here in just a moment.
Yeah, my path in this spot would have been take some shots, use your removal spells on some better stuff, probably play Dragonlord Salumgar on curve if there's anything in play to take. And Sylvan Advocate's as good as anything else, especially because once you take it, you have 6 lands in play. Now it's a 4/5. Brad going a different route.
Yep.
See how it works out.
I believe his draw for the turn, Nelson, was a copy of Salumgar Scorn. So we head back Gougelmann's way. There's a Llanowar Waste. Taking a look at the graveyard here. Could be signifying that he has drawn a Den Protector for the turn. Might be thinking Pitiless Horde on the dash. Connor going to reorganize some lands, make sure he can figure out the best way to take his turn. And it is going to be a morph, which is Den Protector, and we'll see if Nelson's going to let this resolve or not. And I'm not surprised to see a counter spell here. Salumgar Scorn, that's going to reveal Dragonlord Salumgar. That'll take care of that. Nelson sitting up in his chair, waiting for that Pitiless Horde. Perhaps Gougelmann will just hard cast it. First things first, looks like Anafenza is going to attack. Nelson going to fall down to 12. And now Gougelmann will just pass the turn back. Nelson will draw. That's land number 6. It's a fetch land. He's going to fall down to 10. We're going to see Dragonlord Salumgar here try to take that Anafenza.
Yeah, very hard for Nelson to miss here, as any spell is going to be pretty good for him, and land number 6 is great as well.
Yeah, oddly enough, I think the biggest miss, in quotes, would be something like Dig Through Time.
Shambling Vents.
Yeah, okay, that wouldn't be poor too. But as you said, not a lot of bad draws in this spot. Couple of battle lands here for Brad, and you can see Connor going to give that Anafenza over.
This game is not done by any stretch, though. Gougelmann untaps and rips a removal spell for Dragonlord Salumgar. Suddenly, he's back ahead. But he needs to do it, like, now.
now would be good. Now would be good.
Letting Brad untap is really bad news.
Connor going to take a look at the graveyard again. Feels like maybe some delving is on the way. Almost certainly. Are we looking at maybe Murderous Cut off the top? Yes, we are. It's timely. You said he had to draw a removal spell, and he did. Anafenza's back over there. And we can see a dash of a Pitiless Horde here. A huge top deck for Gougelmann. Here comes Pitiless Horde for 5. Nelson's going to fall down to 5. And now Brad's in some real trouble.
Yep. He's got to answer 2 threats. And he's only got 2 cards in hand, so that's asking a lot.
There's Jace. That's a powerful one. It's a little bit late to the party, as we're going to head back Gougelmann's way. Now remember, Nelson does have that copy of Ultimate Price in his hand. Obzon Charm the draw. And those are the two cards in Gougelmann's hand. So he'll start by dashing Pitiless Horde, perhaps?
Well, you know the last card is Ultimate Price.
Well, we do, but Connor doesn't.
Yeah.
There's Ultimate Price.
Yeah, there's the alternate route here if you're playing around specifically Ultimate Price or specifically a counterspell, where you can just attack with Anafenza, assume Brad will not block.
An Obzon Charm?
But it's super risky.
Yes.
It's a safer play for Gougelmann. If he had the information about Brad's hand, he would have definitely done something different, but I can just respect, you got a creature, just cast it.
Nelson going to activate Jace. It'll transform. And now, Ruinous Path appears to be recast. At least that's what Nelson might be thinking. He'll have to transform that Jace out of its sleeve, but he'll get there in just a moment, I'm sure. But he is in the territory that's very scary, which is Siege Rhino territory. And Brad might actually be thinking about going up with the Jace. Interesting. First things first, he'll transform it as he thinks. The big question is, what did Nelson draw for the turn? He drew and discarded, he activated Jace, excuse me, drew and discarded Prairie Stream. But we don't know what that card in his hand is right now. It's a mystery.
Well, if he's contemplating going up, it means he drew an answer because Gougelmann's going to untap and attack. So there's no bluffing to be done here.
Connor will draw a Plains to go along with that Obzon Charm. There is the Plains.
I'm not a fan of having played the Plains first because I would definitely want to be able to play a Shambling Vent or another creature land should Gougelmann draw it.
Well, here's the Obzon Charm. Anafenza, Den Protector, two huge draws. Two very, very good cards. Now he's got to figure out which one he wants to cast. I'm inclined to want to cast Anafenza here. I don't want to play Den Protector where he can get killed.
Exactly. Even if Brad draws very well from here, he needs to draw extremely well to keep up with Den Protector.
This is mighty risky here if you're Connor Gougelmann. Nelson will draw, and Nelson's hand right now is a Foul Tongue Invocation. Jace is going to go up. Foul Tongue's going to be cast right now. Nelson not going to gain any life, unfortunately, for him. But that's a Den Protector that's not going to be able to get something back.
And you can see the problem with that sequencing. Now Brad's got a Jace at 3 loyalty with a removal spell in the graveyard. If Anafenza died, at least he would have an opportunity to play Den Protector and get something on the way back.
Nelson picks up another island for the turn. Now he's got to look towards the graveyard for Jace. Can Jace do any help? Because Shambling Vent was the land and Anafenza was the play. He needs 2 answers. He does not have to, and he will extend the hand. Connor Gougelmann going to win this match here over Brad Nelson, 2-1. Obzon Aggro will take care of Esper Dragons, and for Connor, a great start in his day. A little bit of an upset victory here over Brad Nelson.